simple DNA test shakes a family to its core. Irina, a devoted mother, discovers her two grown daughters aren't biologically hers. The elder daughter has hidden the truth for 8 years. The younger fears losing the only mom she's ever known, and an embittered ex-husband arrives with a lawyer and cold evidence. I became a grandmother on the same day I began to question whether I had ever truly been a mother. It sounds dramatic, but that sunny spring afternoon as I cradled my newborn granddaughter in my arms, a subtle shadow passed through my joy. My daughter Natalia lay exhausted in the hospital bed, smiling weakly at me. I thought her smile was from happiness, but there was something else in her eyes that day, a glimmer of concern that I couldn't quite place. If only I had known then what secret was quietly stirring beneath our happiness. I might have held my breath along with my grandchild's first cries. The maternity ward smelled of antiseptic and new life. I sat in a stiff chair next to Natalia's bed, rocking little Masha, my granddaughter, against my chest. My heart swelled with love and pride as I watched the tiny bundle sleeping soundly. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of continuity. My daughter had become a mother herself, and I was now a grandmother. For 26 years, I had poured my soul into raising my two girls, and this felt like a beautiful reward. I had no reason to doubt anything about our family. How could I? Natalia's dark hair and determined eyes mirrored my own. My younger daughter Nadia's gentle smile and dimpled cheeks resembled mine too, or so I always believed. We were a tight trio, the three of us against the world after my divorce from their father, Victor. "Ma, are you okay?" Natalia's voice was soft, pulling me from my reverie. She must have noticed tears pooling in my eyes. I laughed quietly, brushing a tear away with the back of my hand. "I'm more than okay," I assured her, my throat tight with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." And look at this little angel. I gazed down at Masha's delicate face, marveling at how her tiny fingers curled around my index finger. A whole new generation, a whole new love I never knew I could feel. Nadia stood on the other side of the bed, gently stroking her sister's hair. At 24, Nadia was the quieter of my two daughters, thoughtful and observant. She was still pregnant with her own first child, her belly just starting to show under her loose dress. Her eyes shone with tears as well as she looked at her niece. "She's perfect, Nat," Nadia whispered. The sisters exchanged a smile that warmed my heart. My two girls had always been close, supporting each other like best friends. It was moments like this that made all the struggles of parenthood worth it. I thought back to when my daughters were born 2.5 decades ago. I remember the exhaustion and euphoria after giving birth to Natalia, my firstborn. I had been just 25, with Victor gripping my hand so hard his knuckles went white as I screamed through labor. When the nurse placed baby Natalia in my arms, I felt an instant connection, like a missing piece of my soul had been returned to me. I counted her tiny toes, kissed her wrinkled forehead, and whispered that I would love her forever. I had no idea that in that very hospital, a mistake had been made that would one day make me question everything. Of course, at that time I noticed nothing amiss. How could a new mother suspect anything other than perfection when looking at her newborn? Later, I had my second daughter, sweet Nadia, and our family felt complete. I remember holding newborn Nadia while toddler Natalia pressed a curious finger to her baby sister's cheek. We laughed, calling them our two little dolls. I still have a photograph of that day, a slightly faded picture tucked in an album at home, me in a hospital gown, propped up against pillows, a swaddled baby in each arm, and a tired but radiant smile on my face. Those were the happiest days of my life, days I often revisit in memory whenever I doubt myself. Now, seeing my own child become a mother stirred all those memories anew. "I hope I can be as good a mom as you are," Natalia murmured suddenly, as if reading my thoughts. Her fingers fiddled nervously with the edge of her blanket. The vulnerable quaver in her voice surprised me. Natalia was usually so confident and strong. Ever since she was a little girl, she had a bold streak, the one who would look out for her shy younger sister and even for me. Hearing uncertainty from her was unusual. "You will be," I said firmly. I reached out and squeezed her hand. "You've had a good teacher, after all." I winked, trying to lighten the mood. She managed a small chuckle, yet that flicker of worry in her eyes didn't disappear entirely. I wondered if she was just overwhelmed by new motherhood the way I once was. It's normal to feel afraid and unsure when a tiny new life depends on you. I assumed that was all it was. In the corner of the room, a balloon bobbed, tied to a basket of flowers that one of Natalia's friends had sent. The card read, "Welcome, baby," in glittery script. I realized absent-mindedly that it had been a long time since we had something to celebrate in our family. Life after the divorce hadn't been easy. I had raised the girls mostly on my own for the past 10 years. We had our share of hardships, emotional and financial, but moments like this made everything worthwhile. Victor, my ex-husband and the girls' father, was not present for the birth. He wasn't even in the country as far as I knew, and truthfully, we were better off without his dark cloud hanging over us. I thought of Victor only briefly that afternoon. There was a time I had loved him. He could be a charming, generous man in his good moments. But over the years, especially after the divorce, bitterness had dug lines into his face and into my memories of him. Part of me pitied him. Another part resented him deeply for the way things ended. He had not taken the divorce well, and even after we separated, he would occasionally harass me with phone calls or messages full of anger. His favorite taunt, one that I never understood, was to insist I didn't deserve the girls. "They're not even yours," he spat once during an argument years ago, his voice slurring from drink. I had assumed he meant it figuratively, an ugly attempt to say I was a bad mother. I dismissed it as drunken cruelty. How could it be anything more? The idea that his words might hold a literal truth never crossed my mind. A nurse came in to check on the baby and on Natalia's vitals. We all shuffled aside briefly. I handed little Masha back to her mother's waiting arms. Watching Natalia cradle her newborn, I felt a pang of wistfulness. In that gentle posture, I saw a reflection of myself. She held her baby girl with the same tenderness I remember feeling. I realized that a chapter of our lives had turned. My daughters were adults now, starting families of their own. My role was shifting, yet our bond felt as strong as ever. I wasn't needed in the same way as when they were little, perhaps, but I knew I would always be there for them. Family was everything to me, and I believed nothing could ever change that. A week passed in a blur of new baby bliss and routine. Natalia recovered at home, and I often stopped by her apartment to help with the baby or drop off meals. One evening, about 10 days after Masha's birth, both of my daughters came over to my house for dinner. I cooked a big pot of chicken soup and fussed over them as I always did. The atmosphere was warm and familiar, laughter over old family jokes, cooing at the baby, and gentle teasing of Nadia about her own cravings now that she was expecting. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. Yet, I sensed an undercurrent, especially in Natalia. She seemed distracted, her eyes drifting off thoughtfully whenever conversation lulled, as if weighing something heavy on her mind. After dinner, we sat in the living room with cups of tea. Masha was dozing in a bassinet by the couch. We spoke in hushed tones so as not to wake the baby. A calm contentment settled over me. These were the moments I cherished most. My girls, safe and close, sharing their lives with me. I was telling Nadia about the silly lullaby I used to sing to her when she was little, which made her laugh and hide her face in embarrassment, when Natalia cleared her throat. "There's this new genetics service I read about," she began, almost too casually. She set her teacup down carefully, not meeting my eyes at first. "It offers a kind of family DNA analysis. I was thinking maybe we could try it. You know, just for fun." I looked at her with mild surprise. The suggestion felt out of the blue. "DNA analysis? Like those ancestry tests?" I asked. It was an interesting idea, though I'd never considered doing one before. Sort of. Natalia nodded. This one is more about family connections and health traits. They can compare across 3 generations. I thought it would be cool to have something like that for Masha, to see where she comes from, genetically speaking, like a keepsake for her, to know her lineage. She finally lifted her eyes to mine. There was a strange intensity there, a pleading almost, as if this meant more to her than she let on. I didn't understand why she seemed so invested, but I wanted to support any idea she had, especially if it related to my grandchild's well-being. Nadia perked up. Oh, I've heard of those. They send you a kit. You give a saliva sample and they analyze it, she said, rubbing her own belly absent-mindedly. It could tell us interesting things, like if we have any unusual genes or distant ethnic heritage. Might be fun to compare, I chuckled. Well, I'm not sure how exciting my DNA will be. We have pretty ordinary roots as far as I know, but why not? Let's do it if you girls want to. I shrugged with a smile. Maybe we'll discover we're descended from Genghis Khan or related to royalty. I joked lightheartedly. The idea truly did seem harmless and entertaining to me. Inside, I was pleased that my daughters wanted to include me in this modern little project of theirs. They were adults now with their own lives, but moments like these, making plans together, made me feel like an integral part of their circle still. If spitting in a test tube could bring us a bit of shared amusement, I was all for it. Relief flashed across Natalia's face so quickly I almost missed it. Great. I actually already ordered the kits, she admitted, offering a quick, somewhat bashful smile. They arrived yesterday. I have them here. She reached into the diaper bag at her feet and pulled out 3 slim boxes shrink-wrapped in plastic. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. You came prepared! It struck me that she had anticipated my agreement, or perhaps had been determined to do this regardless. Either way, it was endearing that she was eager. She handed 1 box to me, 1 to Nadia, and kept 1. We should do it now. It's best on an empty stomach and before brushing teeth, and we haven't eaten for a couple of hours since dinner, she said, reading from the instructions. So we spent the next few minutes spitting into small vials and sealing them. We labeled each with our names. I noticed Natalia's hands tremble slightly as she affixed the label to mine that read, Irina Grandmother. I teased her gently. Feeling nervous about finding out we're not as interesting as we thought? Or is the idea of digging into our genes giving you stage fright? She forced a chuckle. Maybe a little of both, she said. Her voice was light, but I sensed tension underneath. It crossed my mind that she might be worrying about some health issue or inherited condition, being a new mother. I reached out and rubbed her back reassuringly. Whatever the results, I'm sure it will be useful information, I offered. And we'll interpret it together, no matter what it says. We're a family. Nothing will change that I had no clue then how ironic those words would feel later. Kits completed, Natalia carefully gathered them up. I'll mail these first thing tomorrow, she said. They say results come back in a couple of weeks via email. Nadia smiled, looking genuinely intrigued. I'm excited to see what we learn. Maybe we really do have some exotic ancestors hidden in the family tree. She winked at me. Maybe so, I agreed with a grin. In truth, I expected nothing but mundane findings, a mix of our known heritage and some fun facts to laugh about. I could never have imagined that in those little vials lay answers that would upend everything I believed about our family. That night, after my daughters went home, I sat alone in the quiet of my living room. The house felt empty after the lively evening. I picked up the photo album we had reminisced over earlier, its pages still open to a picture of me holding baby Natalia and toddler Nadia together. My fingertips brushed over the glossy image of my smiling younger self. There was a profound peace in knowing I had raised 2 beautiful, kind humans. I closed the album and gazed around at the framed photographs lining my walls. The girls' first day of school, their graduation portraits, birthdays, and holidays. Each snapshot was a testament to the life we shared. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I thought about the DNA test again. A tiny ripple of anxiety passed through me. What if it uncovered something unexpected? I chided myself for being silly. Our life was an open book. I had no skeletons in the closet, no estranged relatives or hidden health issues that I knew of. The only person who ever suggested anything strange about our family was Victor, and his bitter words had never been based in reality. Still, the memory of his voice haunted me for a moment in the darkness. "They're not even yours." Why did those words echo back now, after so many years? I shook my head, as if to physically dispel the recollection. Victor had meant to hurt me, nothing more, I told myself. He had been full of lies and spite. I resolved not to dwell on it. My daughters were mine in every way that counted. Soon, the genetic test would simply provide a new way to appreciate how connected we all were. With that comforting thought, I finally drifted to sleep, never once imagining that the truth already lay waiting, quietly ticking down the days until it would announce itself with the ping of an email. 2 weeks later, on a quiet afternoon, the DNA results came back. I was at home alone, sorting laundry in the bedroom, when I heard the familiar ping from my laptop in the next room. It was the alert for a new email. Absent-mindedly, I continued folding a towel, not realizing that my life was about to change with a single click. So many times I had heard that little email chime, always bringing nothing more unusual than bills or work messages. This time it heralded a storm. I wandered over to the desk, still holding the half-folded towel. The subject line on the screen caught my eye. "Your family DNA results are ready." My heart fluttered with a sudden jolt of anticipation. A sliver of that old anxiety resurfaced. Unexpected. I told myself it was excitement. After all, we'd been waiting with curiosity. But as I moved the laptop onto the kitchen table and sat down, I realized my hands were clammy. Why was I nervous? Perhaps because this test felt personal, peeling back layers of us. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just past 2 p.m. Sunlight slanted through the window onto the table, illuminating motes of dust in the air. Everything was so ordinary. The neighbor's dog barking faintly outside, the drip of the kitchen faucet I kept meaning to fix. Yet inside me, an inexplicable unease was blooming. It was as if some part of me sensed that once I opened that email, nothing would be the same. I took a deep breath and clicked it. The email opened with a friendly greeting from the genetics company, along with a summary. "Hello, Irina. Your family analysis is complete. Below are the comparative results between the family members you submitted." I scrolled, scanning for the interesting tidbits we'd been eager to see. There were technical tables showing percentages of DNA shared between each of us. I saw lines comparing Natalia and her baby. As expected, about 50% shared, clearly mother and daughter. Another line for Nadia and Masha, about 25%, just what you'd expect between an aunt and niece. My eyes drifted to the line that listed my name. Irina, grandmother, and Masha, granddaughter. I expected it to show roughly 25%, the typical share for a grandparent and grandchild, but the number was startlingly low. I blinked, thinking I was misreading it. It showed something like less than 1%, negligible. Beside it, a note in small italics. No significant genetic relationship detected outside the range of typical grandparent-grandchild. I stared at those words, uncomprehending. For a moment, it didn't register. I frowned and reread the line, certain it must be a mistake. No significant genetic relationship? That made no sense. I felt a strange emptiness open in my stomach. A hot flush crept up my neck as confusion gave way to a spike of panic. I leaned closer to the screen as if an inch nearer would change the text. My finger trembled on the trackpad as I scrolled further down, searching for the comparison between me and my daughters. There it was. Irina and Natalia, 0% shared, no genetic relation detected. Right below it, Irina and Nadia, 0% shared, no genetic relation detected. I heard a soft thump and realized I had dropped the towel from my hands onto the floor. My vision blurred, a cold sweat prickling my skin. It felt like the ground beneath my chair had cracked wide open. I shook my head violently as if to jar loose an explanation that made sense. Was this some kind of glitch? A mislabeled sample? It had to be. We must have mixed up the vials or the lab had bungled our test. Wild thoughts churned. Perhaps I'd accidentally put someone else's name on the tubes? But no, I remembered clearly. We had each labeled our own, and the data for Natalia and Masha and Nadia and Masha, those were exactly as expected. The only impossible data was me and my girls. My pulse was hammering now. I could hear it in my ears, a rushing sound like I was underwater. I forced myself to breathe slowly, afraid I might faint. I reached for my phone with numb fingers and dialed Natalia almost without thinking. While it rang, I kept staring at those lines on the screen, hoping they might somehow change if I looked enough times. She answered on the third ring. "Hey, Mom," came Natalia's voice, a little wary as if she anticipated something. I could barely find my voice. "Natalia, I got the email. The results," I managed to say. My own voice sounded distant and strange to my ears. There was a pause on the other end, a fraught, loaded silence. Then, quietly, "What did it say?" Her tone had changed. There was a seriousness, almost a resignation in it that cut through my panic. It says I'm not..." I choked on the words, unable to form them. My free hand clutched at my chest. I realized I was trembling. "It says I'm not related to Masha. Or to you. Or Nadia. Not at all." The last phrase came out as a whisper, as if speaking it loudly would break me apart. Tears I hadn't realized were gathering now spilled down my cheeks. Each word tasted bitter like ash in my mouth. On the phone, I heard Natalia exhale shakily. Another silence, heavy as lead. Then, very softly, she replied, "Mom, listen, don't panic. We'll figure this out, okay?" She didn't sound shocked. Concerned, yes, but not surprised. In my fog of emotion, that detail barely registered. All I knew was that my world didn't make sense anymore. "This has to be a mistake, Nat," I pleaded, almost childlike. "It has to be wrong. I'm your mother. I was there. I gave birth to you, to Nadia. I held you both when you were born." My voice cracked. Sobs were threatening to break through, but I held them back, clinging to reason. "I know," she said quickly. "I know what you did for us." There was an urgency in her voice. "Mom, just wait. I'm coming over right now. Please, don't worry, okay? We'll talk as soon as I get there. Promise me you'll be okay for a little while." I nodded even though she couldn't see. I realized I had sunk to the kitchen floor at some point, my back against the cabinets. I pulled myself up, gripping the edge of the table for support. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, Natalia said and hung up. I stood there in the silence that followed, the phone still pressed to my ear. My reflection stared back at me from the dark laptop screen, wide-eyed, pale, utterly lost. How could this be real? Did I unknowingly raise someone else's children? Where were mine if not here? A million questions swarmed in my mind, but not a single answer in sight. Somehow I stumbled to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to steady myself, bracing against the counter. In a haze, I caught sight of that photo album we had looked at weeks ago, still on the sideboard where I left it. The happy faces under the plastic film seemed to belong to another life, another family even. I felt like an intruder in my own memories. I did not know what to think. All I could do was wait for my daughter, to arrive and explain, hoping desperately that there was some explanation that would make this nightmare go away. Little did I know, the truth that was coming would not comfort me at all. It would cut deeper than any lie ever could. Within 15 minutes, Natalia was at my doorstep. I barely remember moving from the kitchen to let her in. It was as if my body was on autopilot while my mind spun in chaos. The moment she saw me, my face blotchy with tears, my hands trembling, she pulled me into a tight hug. I collapsed against her, fresh sobs racking through me. It felt surreal to cry in my daughter's arms about the possibility that she might not truly be my daughter. "It's okay. I'm here," Natalia whispered, stroking my hair as if I were the child. We stood in the entryway for a long minute, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. When I finally managed to catch my breath, I drew back and looked at her. Her eyes were red too. She'd been crying on the way over. There was so much compassion and pain in her expression that my heart squeezed. We moved to the living room couch and sank down. I clutched a tissue, twisting it in my fingers. My voice came out hoarse and broken. "Natasha, what is happening? That email, how can it say I'm not your mother?" I only ever called her Natasha, the nickname from her childhood, when I was particularly distressed or affectionate. Hearing it now made her eyes glisten. She took a deep breath. "Mama, I need you to listen carefully," she said softly. "There is an explanation, but it's a hard one." I stared at her, desperate and afraid. Natalia reached over and held my hand tightly between hers. "First, you need to know, we love you. Nothing will ever change the fact that you are our mother in every way that matters." Tears welled up again in my eyes. "But the test," I croaked. She squeezed my hand. "Let's put the science aside for a moment. You raised us. You cared for us, kissed our bruises, taught us everything. That can't be taken away by some DNA report, okay?" Her voice shook with emotion. "You are our mom. I need you to believe." That I nodded uncertainly, clinging to her words, though they didn't erase the confusion. "I'm trying, but I don't understand. If I'm not your biological mother, then who is? Did they mix up the test? Or," I swallowed, hardly daring to voice the next thought, "did they mix up babies?" Natalia's lips pressed together. That look answered me before she spoke. My breath hitched. "Oh, God, it's true then," I whispered. The idea that had been too outlandish to entertain was now solidifying into reality. "Back at the hospital, something happened, didn't it?" She nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks now. "Yes, it did." I let out a soft wail. Grief, disbelief, anger all rolled into one sound. My mind flashed back to the maternity ward 26 years ago, exhausted, overjoyed, holding a baby I believed was mine. Had that child been someone else's all along? The sheer enormity of it was unbearable. "How do you know?" I demanded, wiping my face with a crumpled tissue. My voice trembled between each word. "How long have you known?" Natalia's grip on my hand tightened. She looked away for a moment, ashamed. "Mama, I've known for 8 years." I gasped softly. 8 years. My own daughter had carried this secret since she was 18, and I had never suspected a thing. There was a tiny sting of betrayal beneath my shock, but I was mostly just bewildered. "All this time? You knew and you didn't tell me?" "I wanted to," she said quickly, turning back to me with pleading eyes. "I almost did, so many times. But I was afraid. I was trying to protect you." I opened my mouth, an incredulous question on my lips, but she rushed on, words tumbling out. "When I was 18, I took one of those consumer DNA tests, just out of curiosity for fun. I never expected anything weird, but when the results came, it showed inconsistencies. Just said my maternal lineage didn't match yours." She paused, chewing her lower lip. "At first, I didn't believe it. I actually thought that test must be wrong. So I did another one through a different company, and it said the same thing. That genetically, I couldn't be your daughter. I felt faint hearing this, imagining my bright, headstrong girl discovering such a thing alone at 18. "Why didn't you come to me right away?" I asked, voice cracking. I wasn't angry. I was hurt and confused that she had borne this alone. Natalia covered her mouth with her free hand as a sob escaped. "I almost did." I printed out the results. "I was going to ask you if maybe I was adopted or something, some explanation, but then I found more." She inhaled unsteadily. "I snooped through some old papers at home." "I'm sorry." I was desperate for answers. "In your files, I found my birth certificate and the hospital discharge papers. Everything seemed normal at first, but then I noticed the number on my infant ID bracelet recorded in the file didn't match the one on Nadia's, or something like that. It was minor, but it made me wonder. I listened in stunned silence as she continued. "So I went to the hospital. I pretended I was doing a research project and needed records from the year I was born. It took some persuasion, but I got a clerk to let me see some archived documents." She wiped her eyes. "That's when I found an incident report. An exchange error note logged for the day after I was born. It was filed internally and marked resolved. I barely understood it, but it referenced a mix-up of 2 baby girls. My blood ran cold. I felt like I might be sick. This was proof, written proof, that the unthinkable had happened. "They mixed you up with another baby girl at the hospital," I murmured, the words tasting bitter as I formed them. "Yes." Natalia's chin quivered. "From what I pieced together, I was accidentally switched with another newborn briefly. And that other baby's mother." She hesitated, her expression pained. "Her mother was you." The room tilted. I closed my eyes, pressing my free hand to my forehead. A low moan escaped me. So it was true. Somewhere out there, another woman had my biological daughter, and I had hers. An error in a nursery a lifetime ago had stolen my child and given me someone else's. And I never knew. I never even suspected. I thought of baby Natalia's face. Well, not Natalia, but the infant I'd brought home, smushed and pink, so beautiful to me. I realized with a jolt that perhaps I had never actually laid eyes on my real firstborn at all. My stomach churned. Where is my real daughter then?" I asked brokenly. "Did you find out? Whose child are you biologically?" Saying those words to my own beloved daughter felt wrong, agonizing. Natalia began to cry in earnest now. She let go of my hand and threw her arms around me. "I'm so sorry, Mama," she wept. "I didn't mean for you to ever have to ask that. I wish I could have protected you from this forever." I held her, rocking slightly as if comforting her, though I was the one whose soul had been cleaved in two. I realized in that moment that any anger or sense of betrayal I'd felt at her keeping this secret was far outweighed by gratitude that she was here, that she loved me enough to worry about my feelings all these years. She had been just a scared teenager when she discovered this, trying to shield her mother from heartbreak. My sweet, selfless girl. "It's not your fault," I whispered into her hair, though tears streamed down my face. "None of this is your fault, Natasha." She pulled back, wiping her nose. "I found out as much as I could, but there were limits. The documents didn't list names, just dates and an internal reference. I couldn't find who the other baby was or where she went. The hospital staff shut me out when I pressed for more information." Her expression hardened a little. "They seemed scared to talk." That made me suspicious something bigger was wrong, like it wasn't just an innocent mix-up. A chill crawled up my spine. "What do you mean?" Natalia pursed her lips, choosing her words carefully. I started to think someone interfered to keep it quiet. I didn't know who, but the way they closed ranks was odd. Eventually, I had to let it go, at least for a while. I didn't want to hurt you, and I had no proof beyond some vague notes. She took a trembling breath and continued. "I told myself what you didn't know. couldn't hurt you. You seem so happy with us. I was terrified that if you found out it would destroy you or make you look at us differently and selfishly. Her voice broke. I was scared I'd lose you. I was afraid you might not want me or Nadia if you knew we weren't yours by blood. I was only 18 and that thought just... She sobbed softly. It just broke me. You were my mom. My only mom. I couldn't bear the idea of anything changing that. I embraced her again, both of us crying. My poor daughter. How lonely and frightened she must have been. Shh, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, I soothed, though my own heart was splintered. You'll never lose me, do you hear? Blood or not, you are my child, I meant it fiercely. In that moment, holding her, I realized that whatever some tests said, the bond we had was real and profound. No revelation could erase the lifetime we shared. After a few minutes, our tears subsided a little. I pulled back to look at Natalia's face. Thank you for telling me now, I said gently. I understand why you hid it. I do. You were trying to protect me, in your way. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. I remember how you always smiled at us when we were kids, even when things were hard. Your smile? It was like a talisman for me. I couldn't stand the thought of taking it away by telling you that you weren't our biological mom. I thought it would break your heart, and I was scared that if your light went out, our whole world would go dark. A fresh tear rolled down my face. My smile a talisman. I never knew she felt that way. The image of my daughter keeping this painful secret just to preserve my happiness was almost too much to bear. I'm so sorry you carried this burden alone, I whispered. You shouldn't have had to. Natalia shook her head. I made that choice. But when circumstances changed, I realized the truth had to come out. I frowned slightly. What changed? Natalia drew a long, shaky breath and answered, Dad. Dad changed everything. Her voice hardened in a way I wasn't used to hearing. After you and Dad divorced, he started making threats, Mama. At first, I thought he was just lashing out, but then I realized he wasn't bluffing. I felt my jaw clench at the mention of my ex-husband. Threats? What kind of threats? Her eyes searched mine. He told me and Nadia that he would take us away from you if he had the chance. That if we weren't really your daughters, you didn't deserve to keep us. She shook her head, anger flashing in her eyes at the memory. This was a couple years ago, not long after the divorce. He was drunk and furious. We tried to ignore him, but it terrified me because I knew he wasn't just speaking hypothetically. He knew the truth, Mom. He has known since the day I was born. My breath caught. The room seemed to shrink around me as the full realization hit. Victor had known. All these years, he knew I wasn't raising my own flesh and blood, and he never told me. Worse, he had used it as a weapon against me. The casual cruelty of his jibes now transformed into calculated malice in hindsight. Rage ignited in my chest, hot and sharp. That devil, I hissed, barely recognizing my own voice. I thought of every time he'd sneered, "They're not even yours." He had been throwing the truth in my face like poisoned darts, reveling in my ignorance, my hands balled into fists on my lap. He knew I would never abandon you girls. He wanted to tear us apart. Natalia nodded grimly. He wanted leverage. And he was willing to hurt you, hurt all of us to get it. After that incident, I became paranoid that he might actually try something. Maybe a legal move or spread rumors. I realized I needed more information and proof, so I dug deeper into the hospital records. That's when I started finding real evidence. And I eventually found someone who could tell the truth. I tilted my head. Curiosity peeked through the haze of anger. Someone from the hospital? Yes, a man named Sergei Ivanov. He was an orderly at the maternity ward back then. I tracked him down. He's retired now, in his 70s. It took a lot of convincing, but he remembered the incident. He said it was a huge deal internally, but it got covered up. He was actually there the morning they realized 2 babies had been swapped. My heart pounded. What did he say? Natalia's grip on my hand tightened again. He said the staff was preparing to inform the mothers, you and the other woman, when Dad intervened. According to Sergei, Dad basically burst into the head nurse's office and refused to allow the swap to be corrected. He was yelling that they must leave the babies as is for your sake. Her lip curled slightly. He told them you were emotionally fragile and that correcting the mistake would send you into a severe depression. And because Dad had connections and influence, the hospital administration caved. They agreed to cover it up. I was shaking from head to toe. The idea of Victor barging in, making such a decision about my life, my child, without even telling me, it was monstrous. He had no right, I spat out. My voice quivered with fury. No right to decide that for me. To rob me of knowing my own baby. My words broke as a sob strangled them. Natalia put an arm around me as I trembled. Sergei said my biological mother, the woman who gave birth to me, was a young single mom. She ended up raising your biological daughter as her own, never knowing about the switch. The hospital gave her that baby, the one you gave birth to, while you took home me. They never told either of you. Tears of anguish blurred my sight. A stranger had my blood daughter all these years, and I had hers, a whole life stolen by lies. Is she still... I tried to ask if my real daughter was alive and well, but the words stuck. I don't know, Natalia said gently. I haven't been able to find out what happened to the other mother or her baby after. The records were scant. Sergei didn't know either. He left the hospital a couple years later. But he did mention the other baby, the one you gave birth to, had a health complication, a heart issue. He thought part of why Dad was so adamant was that your biological baby needed special care or might not survive. And he couldn't bear to put you through that after you'd already struggled with postpartum depression. I inhaled sharply. Postpartum depression. I did suffer from it severely after Natalia's birth, I recalled. That first month I had been overwhelmed and down, though it eventually passed as I bonded with my baby. Victor must have seen how fragile I was. But to use that as an excuse? So, he decided to keep me in the dark, thinking he was sparing me pain? I muttered bitterly. He played God with our lives. Natalia nodded. Exactly. He thought he was saving you and protecting the family image at the same time. You know how obsessed he was with us being the perfect family. A bitter taste filled my mouth. Perfect family, what a joke. Our entire family foundation was built on his deception. And he never intended to tell the truth. No. In fact, Sergei said Dad paid off the head nurse and even the other family, I think to keep quiet. Money changed hands. Rules were bent, all so that you'd never find out you went home with the wrong child. I pressed a palm to my forehead, feeling faint. I couldn't decide what hurt more, the fact that I had been cruelly deceived, or the knowledge that Victor once might have thought he was helping me by doing so. It twisted up my insides in knots of rage, sorrow, and perverse gratitude. Without that swap, I wouldn't have my girls. I'd have different children, or perhaps none if my biological baby didn't make it. The thought was dizzying. The man I despised had given me the daughters I loved by his terrible interference. It was a truth almost too big to hold, cutting at every edge of my heart. I realized I was scratching at the sofa armrest unconsciously, trying to channel my swirling emotions. So, you're saying for 26 years he kept this secret, I said unevenly, and then after we divorced, he threatened to use it to take you both from me, to claim I wasn't your mother, so I had no right to you? Yes, Natalia whispered. Her face hardened. That's why I eventually did the test with the grandchildren. I wanted undeniable proof of what he was hiding, and I wanted it to come out on our terms, not his. I was afraid if he revealed it first or through gossip, it would be even more devastating and you'd have no control. I thought, if we had the facts laid out, we could confront him and anyone else with the truth and evidence and protect you. A wave of fierce love and sadness surged through me. My daughter had orchestrated all this for my sake, to armor me against the cruel machinations of her father. I covered her hand with mine. You did all this? To defend me? I asked, voice shaking. She nodded, tears in her eyes again. I couldn't let him blindside you, Mom. He was already sniffing around recently, asking questions about Masha, making nasty hints. I felt in my gut he was gearing up to cause trouble. I wasn't about to let that happen. Not to you. Not to our family. For the first time since this nightmare began, a spark of resolve lit inside me. Yes, I was crushed and furious and terrified, but I wasn't alone. My daughters, bless them, were by my side, fighting for our bond. I straightened up, wiping my tears. We won't let him tear us apart, I said firmly. He may have given me these children by accident or design, but I raised them. They're mine. He can't change that now, no matter what any blood test says. Natalia managed a small, proud smile through her tears. That's exactly what I told myself. That's why I found the evidence. We can stop him, Mom. I swallowed and asked, what evidence do we have exactly? She reached into her purse, which she had dropped by the coffee table when she arrived, and pulled out a small digital voice recorder. I have this, she said. It's a recording of an interview I did with Sergei, the orderly. And another conversation I managed to get on tape between the doctor who handled the cover-up and, she hesitated, and Dad's brother. My brother-in-law? I asked in surprise. I recalled Victor's younger brother, Anton, who used to work as an admin in the hospital network. We'd lost touch after the divorce. Yes, Anton was apparently involved at Dad's request. He helped pressure the hospital to bury the incident. I confronted Anton recently and got him talking. He didn't realize I was recording. I have him on tape reminiscing about how Victor made that baby problem disappear back in the day, and him laughing about how much it cost. Her jaw clenched. It's sickening, but it's proof. I was stunned by her resourcefulness. My God, you really prepared for war. I had to, she said simply. For you and for Nadia and the kids. I don't want that man's lies poisoning our lives any longer. I nodded, a steely determination starting to harden within me. So what do we do now? Natalia took a breath. If Dad tries anything, legally or not, we'll use all of this. We might even go to the authorities about his actions because what he did was illegal. Switching babies, covering it up, it's a crime. At the very least, no court would side with him to take anything from you once they hear this. The thought of a courtroom, of dragging this intensely personal tragedy out into the public made me feel ill. But if it was the only way to protect my family from Victor, I would do it. I nodded. Okay, we'll do whatever it takes. Just as those words left my mouth, the doorbell rang, sharp and sudden. Natalia and I exchanged startled glances. Through the door's frosted glass panel, I saw a dark, tall shape looming on the porch. My heart stuttered. It was late evening now. The sun had set while we talked. Who? A chill ran through me. Somehow I knew. I could feel his presence like a cold draft seeping under the door. Mom, Natalia whispered, eyes wide. She sensed it too. I rose on unsteady legs and moved toward the door. Before I even reached it, a heavy knock thudded against the wood, making me flinch. With a deep breath, I flipped on the porch light and opened the door. There he stood, Victor, my ex-husband, the architect of my deepest pain. Beside him loomed another man in a gray suit, a leather briefcase in hand, clearly a lawyer. Victor's eyes met mine, and I saw the old anger there, coiled and ready. He held a thin folder under one arm. Irina, he said in a cold, formal voice. He barely looked like the man I once loved. His face was hardened, lips pressed in a cruel line. We need to talk. Behind me, I heard Natalia step up, her presence a bolster to my courage. I tightened my grip on the door, my knuckles white. Despite the fear twisting in my stomach, I kept my voice as steady as I could. You have some nerve coming here. He ignored that. His lawyer cleared his throat. May we come in? It will be better to discuss this privately, the lawyer said, as if we were strangers negotiating a contract. I hesitated, then realized neighbors could probably hear if voices were raised out here. Fine, let him come in, onto my territory. All right, I said curtly, standing aside. Come into the living room. As Victor stepped over the threshold, Natalia squared her shoulders and faced him head on. I closed the door behind us all, heart thumping wildly. The battle I had been bracing for was about to begin in earnest, right here in my home. We led them to the living room. Victor surveyed the place with an air of disdainful familiarity, while the lawyer set his briefcase on my coffee table as if staking a claim. I remained standing. I couldn't bear to sit in his presence. Natalia stood beside me, chin high. Victor wasted no time. He slapped the thin folder onto the table and spoke with icy precision. I have here the DNA test results. Proof that you are not the biological mother of Natalia or Nadia. He practically hissed the words, his eyes drilling into me. It's time to stop living in delusion, Irina. The truth is out. My stomach churned, but I refused to show weakness. What do you want, Victor? I asked, voice cold. He glanced at his lawyer, who adjusted his glasses and addressed me in a rehearsed tone. Mrs. Mikhailova, as these test results indicate, a grave mistake was made years ago. Mr. Mikhailov intends to petition the court to formally acknowledge that you are not the biological parent of his daughters. He will also seek to have any legal maternal rights you claim be terminated. A shockwave of hurt and outrage coursed through me. Terminate my maternal rights? The absurdity and cruelty of it took my breath. I opened my mouth to retort, but Victor cut in. In short, he said, voice dripping with malice, you are nothing to them, and you never were. I'm their father by blood, and I won't allow an unrelated woman to pretend otherwise any longer. I'll be taking steps to correct their birth records and ensure you have no hold over them or my grandchildren. I trembled with fury. How dare you? I whispered. After all these years, how dare you call me nothing to my girls? I raised them. I loved them every day of their lives when you were barely around. My voice rose with passion. You think a piece of paper will erase everything we've been through together? You're the one who's nothing to them. Victor's face flushed red. Believe what you want, he snarled. The court will decide based on facts, not sentiment. And the fact is, you are not their mother. Beside me, Natalia bristled. Enough, she said sharply, stepping forward. We've heard your spiel, Dad. Now it's our turn to speak, the lawyer frowned. Young lady, I advise that. But Natalia ignored him. Her hand slipped into her pocket and pulled out the small recorder device. With a calmness that made me proud, she walked to the coffee table and placed it atop Victor's folder. Before you go any further, you both need to listen to something, she said. Victor eyed the device suspiciously. What's this? My heart pounded. I realized what she was about to do. She was going to lay out the truth, here and now. Natalia's gaze bored into her father. It's the truth, Dad. The whole truth, recorded in the voices of people who know exactly what happened 26 years ago. I saw a flicker of uncertainty in Victor's eyes. He glanced at his lawyer, then back to our daughter. Natalia, what are you... I suggest you sit and listen, Natalia interrupted, her tone steely. It might save us all some time in court. She pressed a button on the recorder. A short crackle of static filled the tense silence. In the next moment, voices from the past began to play, delivering the secrets that would turn this confrontation on its head. A tinny male voice crackled from the recorder, filling the tense silence of our living room. Can't believe you pulled that off, covering up a baby mix-up. Victor, you saved your wife's sanity with that switch. Another voice responded, rough and aged. We did what we had to. My brother insisted. Poor woman was in no state to know her baby was gone. The head doctor and I, we fixed it. Nobody found out I recognized none of the voices, but I didn't need to. I shot a glance at Victor. He had gone rigid, color draining from his face. His lawyer's eyes widened as the implications sank in. The recording continued mercilessly. And he paid you all handsomely for your silence, didn't he? Said the first voice with a dry, accusatory laugh. Ah, well, it was for the best. The family stayed happy, right? Until now, replied the older voice heavily. Secrets don't keep forever. Natalia clicked off the recorder. The voices evaporated, leaving a stunned quiet. My heart was hammering. I studied Victor's expression. A mix of shock and fury warred on his features. He opened his mouth, but no words came. That, my daughter said into the silence, was a conversation between the doctor who handled the error and your brother, Uncle Anton, recorded not long ago. We also have a witness statement from an orderly who was there that day. It's over. Dad. Her tone was ice and fire combined, righteous, unflinching. Victor's lawyer recovered first. He cleared his throat nervously. Mr. Mikhailov, perhaps we should step outside? Be quiet, Victor snapped at him, finally finding his voice. He turned to Natalia, eyes blazing. You spied on my family? On me? Natalia crossed her arms. I uncovered the truth. The truth you hid. You broke the law, Dad, and more than that, you broke our family. How could you? Her voice wavered at that last question, genuine hurt peeking through her anger. How dare you judge me? Victor snarled, though I heard the uncertainty under his rage. I did what I had to do to keep our family together. Your mother was sick. She'd lost her baby, he spat, looking at me with a strange mixture of justification and malice. I saved her from despair. Without me, you wouldn't even be alive, girl. I flinched as if slapped. So it was true. My baby hadn't survived, and he had replaced her with another. A wave of grief for the child I never knew surged through me, but I clamped it down. Without you? I echoed bitterly, stepping forward. You dare claim credit for giving me a child by deceit? For giving me a life built on a lie? My voice rose. You didn't save me, Victor. You stole from me. You think I wouldn't have loved my real baby no matter how sick? You had no faith in me at all? My eyes burned with tears of rage. He recoiled slightly at my words, but his face remained hard. You were on the brink, Irina. I had to make a call. A man protects his family. A man protects his family by telling the truth, I shouted. You protected no one but yourself and your precious image. I gestured at the recorder. And look at what your lies have wrought. You've lost everything now, Victor. Was it worth it? He faltered, mouth opening and closing. For an instant, I saw something like regret flicker in his eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. His expression closed, and he jutted his chin out defiantly. This recording, it won't be admissible. You obtained it illegally. He blustered, though his voice lacked conviction. No court will listen to it. The lawyer put a hand on Victor's arm, murmuring, Victor, we should reconsider our approach. Clearly, even he realized the game had changed. Natalia spoke up, cold and clear. Maybe, maybe not. But Sergei, the orderly, he's ready to testify in person. And the hospital records can be subpoenaed. We have plenty of evidence, even without the tape I watched, as my ex-husband's world visibly tilted. He looked between us, his daughter, his ex-wife, standing united against him, armed with proof of his wrongdoing. His arrogance was crumbling. For a moment, I almost pitied him standing there, exposed and powerless in front of the family he once controlled. Victor drew a shaky breath. What do you want? He asked quietly, all bluster gone. I answered before Natalia could. We want you to leave us alone. We'll be informing the authorities of everything unless you agree right now to drop any challenge and accept that I am and will remain the girl's mother in every legal and real sense. If you interfere with us again, Victor, we won't hesitate to press charges for what you did." My voice was ice. I surprised myself with my steadiness, but I meant every word. He glared at me, but I could see the defeat in his eyes. He was cornered. If he fought, he'd likely face not only public disgrace, but possibly prison. If he relented, at least he might escape punishment beyond losing this battle. The silence stretched. At last, Victor gave a terse nod. "Fine," he bit out. He looked at Natalia and then away, shame creeping into his expression. "Have it your way." His lawyer exhaled, clearly relieved at his capitulation. He began packing up his briefcase hurriedly. Victor lingered a second, meeting my eyes. In them, I saw fury and something like sorrow swirling together. Perhaps in that moment, he realized what his own actions had cost him, the love and respect of the very people he claimed he was trying to protect. He turned without another word and stalked out of the living room. The lawyer offered a stiff nod and followed. I trailed them to the door, needing to see him gone with my own eyes. As I opened the door wide, Victor paused on the threshold. Night had fully fallen. The porch light cast harsh shadows on his face, making him look older, defeated. "You've brought this on yourself," I said quietly. It wasn't gloating. It was simply the truth. He said nothing. His jaw worked, but no sound emerged. With a final, long look, was that regret softening his eyes? He stepped into the darkness. I shut the door behind him, the latch clicking with a satisfying firmness. As the bailiff gently took his arm, I noticed Victor's once proud posture sag. In that moment, he looked small and tired, a man defeated by his own deeds. He did not spare another glance our way as he was led through the side door. For a long moment, I just stood there, breathing hard, tears of adrenaline and heartbreak slipping down my cheeks. It was over. The confrontation I dreaded and dreamed of was finally over. I felt Natalia's hand gently touch my back. "Mama," she said softly, "you did it." You stood up to him. I let out a trembling breath and turned to her. We embraced tightly. "We did it," I corrected, holding her close. It was true. Without my daughters, I might never have had the strength or the means. They had saved me as much as I had ever saved them. Over her shoulder, I caught a glimpse of the empty living room, the abandoned folder of DNA results still on the table. A surreal thought struck me. In the span of a single day, my entire reality had been shattered and pieced back together in a new shape. The facts of my life were different now, but the love at its core remained. Maybe Victor had power over our blood, but he had none over our hearts. After a few moments, we separated. There was exhaustion etched in Natalia's face, and I realized I must look the same. So much had happened in such a short time, and yet it wasn't entirely finished. We decided to head home shortly after the hearing, eager for rest. My daughters and I spoke in relieved, excited tones as we left the courthouse. But once we were in the car, a heavy quiet fell. The adrenaline of the morning was wearing off, and exhaustion crept in. I offered to have a little time to myself before we gathered later to celebrate. I think we all sensed the need to process everything. The drive home felt dreamlike. The late sun hung low, painting long shadows across the quiet street. My mind drifted over the whirlwind of recent events. Had it really been just a day ago that my entire reality came crashing down? Now here I was, officially vindicated as a mother, yet my heart still ached with the bruises of what we'd endured. My bones felt like lead, the emotional toll of the day finally making itself known in the heaviness of my limbs. I thought of the baby I never knew, of the years of deception, and I let myself feel sorrow for those lost pieces even amidst the victory. It struck me that even triumph can carry a sting. The truth had set us free, but not without scars. My thoughts turned to my girls. They had been so strong, but I knew this had shaken them too, especially Nadia. My younger daughter had remained unusually quiet throughout the car ride. She sat beside me, hands folded over her pregnant belly, gazing out at the passing buildings in silence. I glanced at her pale profile and saw tension in her brow. Was she upset? Tired? It was hard to tell. I reached over to gently squeeze her hand and she managed a small smile but said nothing. Her silence worried me more than any words could have. A worrying thought niggled at me. After all this, did Nadia feel uncertain of me? Of herself? The bond between us had been proven, but perhaps she was still processing what it meant. In the chaos of legal battles, I hadn't truly spoken with her alone about how she felt. A mother's mind is never at rest. I couldn't help wondering if some part of her might see me differently now that she knew another woman had given birth to her. Or worse, perhaps she feared I might see her differently. The idea broke my heart a little. When the taxi dropped me off in front of my apartment building, I gave both girls hugs through the window. Natalia had insisted on taking the taxi onward to her own place to check on baby Masha and arrange for us all to have dinner together that evening. Nadia lived only a few blocks away and said she'd go home to rest and then meet later. We parted with smiles and promises of "see you tonight." For a moment, I simply stood on the curb after the taxi pulled away, filling my lungs with crisp air to steady myself. But as the cab pulled away, I noticed that Nadia hadn't driven off. Her car, which had been following us from the courthouse, was now parked down the street. Through the windshield, I could see her sitting behind the wheel, head lowered. She was leaning forward over the steering wheel, her posture crumpled in a way that sent a pang of worry through me. Something in my chest tightened. I turned and began to walk up the short path to my apartment entrance, fishing my keys from my bag. Autumn leaves skittered across the sidewalk at my feet. I felt the cool bite of the breeze on my cheeks still damp from earlier tears. It was over, I reminded myself. We were free to live our lives again. Yet the unsettled feeling in my stomach remained. At that moment, I realized some shadows still lingered, and I hoped with all my heart they would soon be dispelled. Just as I reached the steps of my building, I heard a car door slam behind me. Footsteps followed, quick and deliberate. I looked back and saw Nadia coming towards me. One arm was wrapped protectively around her midsection, and her other hand trembled slightly as she brushed away a strand of hair from her face. Her eyes were red as if she'd been crying. "Nadia?" I asked, concern rising in my voice. I paused there on the front stoop, the key cold in my hand. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, and in the quiet of our residential street, I could hear her uneven breathing as she approached. She stopped a few paces from me, her lips pressed together in an effort not to sob. Tears glistened in her eyes despite her attempts to blink them away. My heart clutched at the sight. This was my gentle, quiet girl, always so afraid of making others worry, now clearly struggling with something she could no longer hold inside. "Mama," she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. It broke on that single word. I stepped down off the stoop immediately and went to her, instinctively reaching out to steady her elbow. Her brown eyes met mine, overflowing with vulnerable emotion. In them, I saw a flash of the little girl who used to tug my sleeve when she was frightened of a thunderstorm or had a secret to confess. She opened her mouth to speak, but a sob escaped instead. Gently, I drew her into my arms right there on the sidewalk. She pressed her face into my shoulder for a long moment, shoulders shaking. I rubbed her back, my own eyes filling anew. "It's okay, sweet one," I murmured softly. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." At those words, Nadia pulled back just enough to look at me. "Are you sure?" she choked out, one hand still clutching the fabric of my coat as if to anchor herself. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Mama, I was so afraid that you might leave us." Her confession came out rushed and desperate. "When I found out about the DNA, a part of me was terrified that you wouldn't want me anymore, that you might not see me as your daughter and you just..." She couldn't finish as a fresh wave of tears came. "Oh, my darling, no," I whispered, my voice breaking. I cupped her face in my hands, wiping her tears with my thumbs. "Never. I would never leave you or stop loving you. You are my daughter, Nadia. Nothing will ever change that. She nodded through her tears, trying to catch her breath. I know it sounds silly, she hiccuped, but I kept imagining, what if you left? What if you went to find your real daughter and forgot about us? A sharp ache speared through me at those words. I could never forget about you girls, I said vehemently. My own tears were flowing freely now. You and your sister are my world. You grew inside my heart, if not under it. Do you understand? Nadia let out a trembling breath. I think so, she said softly. She covered my hands with her own, squeezing as she searched my face. I needed to hear you say it, Mama. I pulled her close again, resting a hand on her swollen belly between us. The baby within gave a little kick against my palm, as if echoing the moment. We both gasped lightly and then laughed through our tears. I realized it was the first genuine laugh we'd shared since before this ordeal began. I felt the last knot of fear in my chest uncoil, replaced by pure, unspoken love. I know, Nadia whispered, resting her hand over mine on her belly. I'm sorry I doubted, even for a second. It was stupid. No, I interrupted gently. Not stupid, just human. We've all been shaken by this. But listen to me. I placed a finger under her chin, lifting her face so she could see the absolute certainty in my eyes. Blood is a matter of chance, of circumstance. It sits in a file or on a piece of paper like a dusty doll left on a shelf. But love is what makes a family. All these years of holding you when you cried, cheering your triumphs, nursing you through sickness and laughing at your jokes, that's what makes you my daughter. We've built our own blood, you and I, drop by drop, memory by memory. A tiny smile appeared on Nadia's face as my words sank in. Behind her glasses, her eyes, so like my own, held a dawning light. You grew inside my heart, I continued softly, and nothing will ever change that. Not time, not truth, not DNA results, okay? She let out a long exhale as if releasing all those pent-up fears into the chill autumn air. Okay, she said, her voice steadier now. Then she added with a shy, trembling smile, and you grew in mine, Mama. You've been in my heart forever. I couldn't speak for a second, my throat thick with emotion. I gathered her into one more embrace, and we held each other tightly. In that embrace, all the uncertainties and anxieties finally dissolved, replaced by the warmth of our unbreakable bond. I felt the last knot of fear in my chest uncoil, replaced by pure, unspoken love. After a moment, I felt the baby kick again, more insistently this time, as if reminding us of his presence. Nadia laughed, wiping her face. He's saying he wants to go inside. It's cold out here, she joked softly. I chuckled and brushed a strand of hair from her eyes. All right, let's get you both inside, I agreed. I retrieved my keys from where they had fallen on the stoop and opened the front door. We stepped through the threshold arm in arm. The hallway light clicked on, casting a gentle glow around us. The familiar scent of home, a mix of vanilla and the dried lavender by the door, embraced us as warmly as any hug. As I shut the heavy door behind us, I realized I was closing the door on this long chapter of doubt and pain as well. Ahead of us, up the stairs, was home. Warm, bright, and filled with all the promise of our healing. Together, we climbed toward that light side by side, ready to begin anew. For the first time in a long while, we felt truly hopeful. Spring sunlight poured through the hospital window, painting golden rectangles on the floor. I sat beside Nadia's bed, cradling my newborn grandson in my arms. He was mere hours old, pink and perfect, with a downy tuft of dark hair and a surprisingly strong grip around my finger. My heart swelled almost painfully with love as he yawned and blinked up at me for the first time. Nadia was propped up on pillows, exhausted but radiant. She watched me rocking her son with a contented smile. He likes his babushka already, she murmured. using the affectionate term for grandmother. I felt tears of joy prick at my eyes. Just a few months ago, I had feared what the future held for our family. Now here we were, welcoming new life together, a life that carried all our hope and love forward. "He's got your nose," I said softly, tracing the tiny slope of the baby's nose. I glanced at my daughter and couldn't help but recall the day I first held her. I had believed with all my soul she was mine, and she is. That truth had survived every test. A gentle knock at the door announced Natalia's arrival with her own little one. My eldest swept into the room quietly, balancing 1-year-old Masha on her hip. Masha squirmed until Natalia set her down. Then the toddler toddled straight to my knee, curious about the new baby in Grandma's arms. "Careful, Malaya," I cooed, adjusting so Masha could peek at her tiny cousin. She gazed with big eyes, then reached out and patted the baby's blanketed leg as if to say hello. We all laughed softly. Natalia came around the bed to kiss her sister's forehead. "How are you feeling, Mama Bear?" she teased. "Tired." "Happy," Nadia answered, and our eyes met in a warm understanding. I handed the newborn gently to his mother's waiting arms. Watching Nadia cuddle her son, I felt a sense of completion wash over me. Life had come full circle in the most beautiful way. I thought of the fragile uncertainties that had burdened us not long ago and compared them to this moment, so full of love and clarity. The scars of the past hadn't vanished, but something new and strong had grown around them, binding us even closer. Deep down, I whispered a prayer of gratitude for the second chance at joy that life had given us all. Later that summer, our family gathered in my living room for a casual Sunday lunch. The windows were open to a mild breeze and birdsong. From the kitchen came the aroma of roast chicken and herbs, a meal we had prepared together, laughing and chatting as we used to in simpler times. I sat on the couch with baby Nikolai, my grandson, named in honor of my late father, asleep against my shoulder. Across from me, Natalia was helping little Masha stack wooden blocks on the coffee table, clapping and cheering each time her daughter managed to balance one. On the armchair, Nadia leaned back with a contented sigh, sipping tea while keeping a playful foot rocking the cradle beside her. In it, her son, now 3 months old, gurgled in his sleep. Never had my home felt more alive. Sunlight danced over the framed photos on the walls, pictures of birthday parties, graduations, beach trips, each a testament to the life we shared. We hadn't taken any new family portraits since the revelations, but I realized it didn't matter. The truest evidence of our bond was right here in the way we enjoyed each other's company, comfortable and whole. At one point, as we ate and talked, the conversation turned reflective. It was usually Natalia who voiced the deeper thoughts, but this time it was Nadia who spoke quietly. "Mama," she said, "do you ever wonder about her?" "The other mother?" The gentle clatter of plates eased to silence. I saw both girls watching me with concern, perhaps worried that the question would upset me. I dabbed the corner of my mouth with a napkin and thought carefully before replying. "I do wonder," I admitted softly. "I think about the woman who gave birth to you two. I pray that wherever she is, she's had a good life. Maybe one day our paths will cross, maybe not." I reached across the table to squeeze both my daughter's hands. But I also know this. The mother-daughter relationships we have here, I looked into their familiar eyes so full of love, are the ones that shape us. That's our reality. The sisters nodded, understanding in their faces. We had all made peace in our own ways with the unknown parts of our story. We had chosen to focus on the abundance of blessings we had, rather than the gaps left by fate. Natalia cleared her throat, eyes shining. "Besides," she added with a grin aimed at her sister, "we keep Mom plenty busy." No time for her to get rid of us even if she wanted to. She shot me a teasing wink. I laughed and protested, "Oh, hush you two." As if I'd ever want that, I squeezed their hands once more before releasing them. "You're stuck with me forever, understand?" They answered by bursting into laughter and in unison saying, "Forever." My heart swelled. warm and secure in the knowledge that they truly believed it now. That evening, after everyone had gone home and the house grew quiet, I found myself alone with my thoughts. I stood in the small nursery corner I'd set up in my bedroom, a crib and a few toys kept for when the grandchildren visit. In the soft lamplight, I ran a finger along the edge of a plush teddy bear I'd placed on the shelf. It was one of the dolls from my daughter's childhood, a well-worn little bear that had been hugged and mended so many times. My gaze lifted to the shelf above, where a lone keepsake from the tumultuous year sat, the very folder of DNA test results that upended our lives. I had tucked it away there months ago, unsure what to do with it. Now I reached up and took it down. The papers within rustled dully as I opened the cover. There it was in black and white, proof that by blood I was unrelated to the children I devoted my life to. Once, those words had nearly broken me. Now they felt strangely irrelevant, just letters on a page lacking the power they once held. I slid those documents back into the folder and with a quiet sense of authority placed it back on the shelf. Not at the forefront, but pushed behind a row of my old diaries and a couple of framed family photos. The symbolic act made me smile. The truth in those pages would always be a part of our story, but it no longer defined us. It could sit up there, gathering dust, like a doll in storage, while we lived and loved in the present. Looking around the room, I took in the symbols of our journey, the crib where a new generation slept safely when visiting, the faded teddy bear that had been stitched up with care, the photographs of two strong women who would always be my daughters. Biological truth had arranged facts neatly on paper, but we had chosen the people who would hold us and love us unconditionally. As I turned off the lamp and prepared for bed, I felt a profound peace settle in my chest. Our family had been tested in the most extraordinary way, and we emerged not shattered, but stronger. We had learned that blood can make a relative, but loyalty, compassion, and time make a parent and child. Before sleep, I offered up a silent prayer of thanks for the daughters who chose me as their mother every day, for the grandchildren who carried our love into the future, and even for the winding path of truth that in the end led us here. We had faced the storm of secrets and stepped into the calm hand in hand. Whatever lay ahead, I knew one thing with unshakable certainty. I was, and always would be, Mama, and that was the truest gift life had given me.